Firstly, I want to begin, though, by acknowledging country. I'm coming to you from Larrakia country in Darwin, and I want to acknowledge the First Nations that are the owners of the country from wherever you're coming from today. I pay, on behalf of all of us, we pay our respects to the peoples and their elders past and present. Firstly, a bit about myself. My name is Thomas Mayer. I'm a Torres Strait Islander man. I'm an official of the Maritime Union of Australia, and I'm an author of the strategically placed books behind me. And I'm the facilitator today. I'm an advocate for the Uluru Statement from the Heart, among many other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that have built a movement from pretty much complete dismissal from where most Australians didn't even know about it to a place where we have great momentum and the opportunity to fundamentally change who we are as Australians, the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in this country, and then also the practical and pragmatic ways that we can finally close the gap. But I'm not the speaker today. That's just a bit of an overview about what we're talking about. I'm going to introduce our speakers, our panel members today. We have Dean Parkin from the From the Heart campaign, Nicole Laupepe from the Sydney Alliance, and Craig Cromelin from the Land Council in Orange. I'm going to ask them to tell us more about themselves when it's their turn to speak. All of these speakers, are just some of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that have been campaigning very hard for what the Uluru Statement calls for. They have some great knowledge, some great skills, and the actions that they've taken to share with us, but also the experiences that they've had. This is going to be a wonderful yarn where you can get so much for, and I hope you get motivated by them as well. The very first speaker that I'll invite is Quandamooka man, Dean Parkin. So take it away, Dean.
Thanks a lot, brother Thomas. And thank you for the opportunity to join this awesome panel today. Obviously, I want to pay my respects to the people, the land on which I'm gathered, and that's my own country. I'm very, very fortunate to be in the position to be home here. I'm in Ngiyampaa, which is also known as North Stradbroke Island. And it's obviously a very personal thing for me to acknowledge my own elders, both those that have gone before and those that are still with us, passing on their wisdom, passing on their knowledge, pulling me into line when I need it, and generally providing the guidance that allows me to do what I can do, and particularly through this work with the campaign. I'm the director of From the Heart, as Thomas said, and From the Heart is the campaign born out of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And our focus is very, very specifically on achieving a successful referendum on the first reform, the voice to Parliament with the constitutional guarantee. So the Uluru Statement is a very, personally, I have a very strong connection to it. I was involved with Arnie Pat Anderson, Professor Megan Davison, Noel Pearson throughout the Referendum Council regional dialogues. I co-facilitated each one of those regional dialogues. And the Uluru Constitutional Convention through May 2017. I had the great privilege of listening and hearing what people talked about the Uluru Statement, about where it came from, the issues that they were concerned about, the optimism that they had, the deep well of experience that people tapped into to bring all of the competing ideas together and all of the competing notions together around constitutional recognition to land on the Uluru Statement from the Heart. An extraordinary achievement, an extraordinarily generous achievement. 430 words, the Uluru Statement is. I'm hoping most of you have read it. It only takes 3 minutes. I'm sure most of you have. So it was a great privilege to be part of that. I think the one thing that I'd like to do, and I don't want to talk too much, you can find out more from fromtheheart.com.au. And I'd encourage you to please sign up and join the campaign. The one message I'd really like to leave with you is actually there's an incredible amount of momentum behind us right now. 4.5 years on from the Uluru statement. I've seen some commentary, I've heard some commentary that says, you know, it's gone away, it's not important. You know, we've got COVID that's affecting all of our communities, all of our families in very real ways. The idea that this is not an issue of the top of people's minds, a voice and a referendum on a voice. And I can say with evidence that is wrong. And actually, we are much closer to achieving a referendum on the voice than many would give us credit for. I want to say that there are 3 key ingredients that we need. We need bipartisanship on the question of constitutional recognition, and we can tick that. Both the government and Labor at the last election took election commitments to hold a referendum this term of Parliament. Obviously, COVID has made that impossible, but the bipartisanship is there. The second thing we need is the design of a voice, and Minister Wyatt has received the final report on the co-design of the voice to give us an idea of what the structure and functions will look like. So the shape of it is starting to emerge. And the last thing we need is the public support. We did some research in March last year to understand where that public support was. And in March last year, at the beginning of the campaign, just as COVID was really starting to kick off, 49% of Australians would have voted yes in a referendum had it been held then. Only 20% were against, and the remainder were undecided. 18 months on, in the midst of a global pandemic, and we did the polling when Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane were all in a hard lockdown, the numbers have risen 8 points from 49% to 57% would vote yes in a referendum. The no's have dropped from 20 to 16%, and 25% are undecided. And one of the interesting things about those undecideds is that the more that they are aware of and understand what's being proposed with a voice, the more that they understand that it is a very practical measure for our people and a very fair measure for our people, the more likely they are to support it. So today we're talking about the Uluru Statement. I'm going to be quite selfish and say our main priority at this point in time is to achieve that first reform, which is the voice. And I would encourage you to continue to have conversations in your families, your communities, in your networks, because as people understand this more, that directly translates to support, which will hold us in good stead when the referendum is held. And if we can focus in on that voice, I truly believe that in the next term of Parliament, we will achieve a historic and successful referendum to give that voice the constitutional guarantee that the Uluru Statement called for. So jump on board, keep having the conversations because it's working, and encourage people to get involved with the campaign, as I said, at fromtheheart.com.au. I might just stop there, Thomas, and I'm really keen to hear from Nicole and Brother Craig there too.
Yeah, great stuff, Dean. And I think it was remiss of me to mention this in the introduction, that when we are all gathering here in the interest of peace, the Uluru Statement is very much a document that is about peace. They are proposals about peace. The Uluru Statement says that the culmination of our agenda is Makarrata. And that means that to be able to, so firstly, Makarrata is a Yolngu word for the coming together after a struggle. It is a dispute resolution process. And if we are to achieve peace, then we can learn from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, from Makarrata, the longest continuing culture on this planet, about how to resolve disputes and come together after a struggle. The reason why Dean says...
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. I just also wanted to say, Thomas, I did forget one thing too. You reminded me. That the numbers I gave you were the general population numbers. I wanted to say that the mob support has risen from 71% to 80% in that 18 months. So not only are the Australian population getting behind us, but the mob are rallying too. Sorry, Thomas.
No, that's great, mate. That's very important. And so the reason why, Dean, also, just to put words in your mouth, brother, it's not a selfish thing to say that voice must come first. It's actually very, very logical. It should be selfish for all of us, because if we want to achieve peace, if we want First Nations to be in the centre of decision making and sharing our wisdom and experience in political decisions, then the very first thing we need to establish is a representative body to have a voice to be able to begin that process. Thank you, Dean. I'd love for you to share more of the statistics and learnings from the campaign a bit later on. The other thing I forgot to mention is after these first opening remarks by our panellists, we're going to watch Rachel Perkins, a film that world-class filmmaker Rachel Perkins put together. It goes for about 20 minutes, and it is a great film, covers the history of the struggle, so it'll give you great context to how the Uluru Statement came to be and why it's so important. But our next panellist that I'd like to welcome to introduce himself in greater detail is Craig Cromelin. Craig was at Uluru, and he's got some very, very special feelings that he had to share with us. Craig? You're on mute, brother.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Brother Dean, for your insight, and you were very instrumental in a lot of those regional forums that was taken around the country, certainly to the point up at Uluru. For the benefit of everyone, my name's Craig Cromelin. I'm a proud Ngiyampaa Wiradjuri man. I come from a little Aboriginal community called Murrumbidgee, which is more or less central New South Wales, near a larger town which is called Lake Angelica. Back when the Uluru Statement was fought for and argued for by some key people that was involved, Auntie Pat Anderson, certainly Megan Davis and Noel Peace, fought for the ability to get some conversations up and around the country, which they were lucky to even get that little bit. I was a councillor with New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. I was a councillor from 2007 through till 2019. For a period, 2014 to 15, I was the chairperson of the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. We were approached, the actual date would have been around 2017-18, Dean, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Craig.
Yep, we were approached by Auntie Pat and Megan to see if we'd be interested in being involved or sponsoring the New South Wales regional forums, of which there were two, one in Dubbo and one in Western Sydney. And the council at the time agreed to be a part of it, that it was a conversation that needed to happen. Obviously, there was going to be a whole lot of anger from a whole lot of people that felt they weren't involved, that the discussion was centered around, a few things rather than a broader conversation. But given the constraints that the panel were given to pull all of this together in a timely manner, in an organised fashion, trying to capture as many people as possible. Listening to a lot of the conversation, there was a lot of anger and a lot of good conversation that took place at Dubbo. Many of those people that were involved in Dubbo were involved in going up to the Uluru Statement. Obviously, then the Sydney regional dialect took place, and again, it was another conversation. and again, they stirred up raw emotion for a lot of people. Obviously, there were arguments about, sovereignty, and the one thing that was always made clear that no one in any shape or form, and the statement actually says this isn't about saying that we've given up our sovereignty. In fact, this is a way of enforcing and enshrining our sovereignty through a statement and a gift to the Australian people. My observation when I look, I'm not someone who likes to stand at the front, although all my life I've been a chairperson. I'm a humble person. I like to let people step forward and have their conversation. When the going gets tough, that's when I step forward. But when I went up to the Uluru statement and saw all of the people, all the mob that come from all over, and we had young, we had old, and I mean that with a great deal of passion and affection, not from the old status, but my hair's a little bit thinning these days. We had male, female, we've had, people that have been in the trenches for many years. We had people that come from all walks of life that came together, that brought all of those regional dialects, forums, the conversations that took place. We had to break off into groups. I chose a particular group, and once we were in that group, we couldn't leave. We couldn't mingle with others. We had to stay in that group. And I was so inspired by the knowledge that was around the table there, people that I've seen, in the trenches fighting for Aboriginal rights, sitting there talking with young, articulate Aboriginal people that are going through universities, colleges, etc., that are walking different paths, that are now prepared to take up that fight that these fellas and these ladies were involved 20, 30 years ago. And what was even more pleasing was when they finally put the Uluru statement together. Everything that I observed out at Dubbo, everything that I observed in Western Sydney Forum, and certainly everything that I observed in our particular group that I was involved in was captured in that statement. And I sat there, and it was this wonderful, powerful urge of emotions that were just captured and released once they put that statement up, and everyone in that room rose and stood as one. And I can honestly say all of my life, I've never stood for the national anthem as a kid. I mean, I go back to the days when we used to have God Save Our Gracious Queen as our national anthem. I can remember not standing for the current national anthem, still don't. But on that day, I stood with such pride that just overwhelmed everyone. And it was such a powerful experience to be a part of. The traditional owners of country and the way Aunt held us all together when there was rumblings and grumblings that took place in the hall. She said, "My people, we got to come together." My goodness, it was such a wonderful thing. I just want to finish by saying, when I went home from that, and I was on such a wonderful high. Momentum is great, but you got to capture momentum. You've got to keep it going. I'm pleased to say that what I observe on my Instagram, the amount of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people that are signing up to the Uluru statement is amazing. It's not surprising to me, because when I went home and I went back to Lake Adjelly, I'm thinking, oh, no one back here would know. 3 sisters, white ladies, very lovely people, wonderful people. they come up, the first thing they said, Craig, how wonderful was that Uluru statement? I said, I was there. Oh, how wonderful was that? They said, how can we be involved? So it's out there. People want to be involved in it. We've got to keep the motion or the movement going. I know it's going. And kudos to Thomas, to Dean, who's been still at the coalface of it all, still pushing. And there are others around that are doing all of this wonderful thing. But I know that there is people out there that want to be a part of it. They want to sign on. And look, if there are some things in life that you experience that you know that you'll never forget, and that's one of them. That's one of the greatest things that I've experienced in all my life, from a leadership thing, from being involved, not for my personal self, but it involves me. It involves my family, and I know that when my time on this earth finishes, that it will capture my great-grandchildren that are now just starting to be born into this world, that we've planted a seed, that I was fortunate enough to be involved in a small way, at least having a conversation about it, getting people to think about it, considering it, and they will be the ones that will be able to, well, we're bearing the fruit, or we plant the tree, they'll be able to get the fruit from that tree. That's what I'm hoping will come out of it. But thank you. I look forward to the interaction. Thank you for the invite. And certainly, I just want to say, Thomas, to that group that have helped to pull all of this together, thank you so much. There's a lot of hard work from people behind the scenes that are sitting there that make this thing happen, as was the case with Uluru's statement, and anything that is worthwhile happening, whether it's in your community or regional or statewide or Australia-wide. It takes a lot of work. So thank you to everyone, and thank you from my heart.
Thank you, Craig. Powerful, powerful words. You are a very humble man. For everybody listening here, it took quite a bit to convince Craig to join this panel today. Myself and Robin, who's one of those organisers that have put a huge amount of work into this. We're so glad that we convinced you, Craig, because the way that you talk about how it felt that final morning at Uluru, that third morning, it was just, it was a political feat. It was a moment of inspiration and coming together that this country should celebrate forever. It's as powerful as Eureka. It's as courageous as the Anzacs and everything. It was a demonstration of how we achieve peace. That we came together, that we did the hard work, that we had the debates. We weren't all there for peace, but we certainly achieved something that can inspire this country to be better. One of the people, so Dean is also a humble man. He, for those that are unaware, and what Craig mentioned, Dean was at all of the dialogues and at Uluru around the country. He pretty much gave up 12 months or more than 12 months of his life, really, to organise it, and then pretty much 6 months on the road, wasn't it, brother, to get that, to facilitate that bringing together. Dean was at the front of all of those dialogues. Dubbo in Sydney was mentioned by Craig, writing, on the whiteboard as people spoke, and bringing together their what they had to generously give to the conversation into a coherent way that could be recorded and then endorsed as an accurate record of meeting. So Dean, Craig, and myself, we were all at Uluru. But I think, Craig, you were basically saying how you didn't have to be there to feel this. I saw people commenting in the chat that, that Craig's speech there brought tears to their eyes. Nicole, our next panelist and speaker, wasn't at Uluru, but she's a great example of a person that saw that what we did was right, that saw that it was a wonderful opportunity. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your journey, Nicole, and the work that you do.
Thank you, Thomas. Hello, everybody. It's a real privilege to be here today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm an Aboriginal woman from the Gomeroi Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians across the lands in which we all meet today, and pay respects to elders past and present. I'd like to acknowledge the impact of their footprints upon our lands, you know, because of their warrior spirits, their ability to continue to truth tell, and in hope to create pathways to ensure that all people from all cultures would flourish on these beautiful lands that we all call home. These lands that we all call home were meant to be the inheritance of my people, the inheritance of our children and our children's children. So often, as I reflect on the Uluru Statement from the Heart, I'm going to leave the political conversation with my brothers here on this panel. But I come to you today just as an Aboriginal woman, as a mum, as a grandmother, and as an Aboriginal worker who has worked in systems around the forcible removal of our people and currently still work in the child protection system, a system and industries that have often left our people and our children voiceless. So when we talk about the importance of ensuring that voice is heard, for me, we no longer have another 50 years. How many more children are going to be lost to the system? How many more children are not going to have a future to prosper and to live in hope and in peace? For me, as an Aboriginal woman, when I think of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, it brings tears to my eyes to think that in my lifetime, that the scales will begin to tip to empower my people. I guess for me, a couple of years ago, I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Uluru Statement from the Heart Working Group for the Sydney Alliance, and I'm also the Cultural Director for Youth Off the Streets. A couple of years ago, I was approached by the Sydney Alliance to come involved and speak to some women that wanted to support the Uluru Statement from the Heart. On that journey, I shared with them what the word Makarrata meant for me. After walking right across these nations, often I would hear that resilience was one of the most powerful gifts that our people had given this nation. And I would often sit back in those moments and think, no, the greatest gift that we gave this nation was our ability to forgive. And that is the power of the Makarrata, the coming together after a struggle. Part of the Uluru Statement from the Heart was finding the nation, finding the heart of our nation. And for me and the journey at the Sydney Alliance, that's what we did. And although it has many beautiful elements around and what it meant for First Nation Australians, what we were able to do was come together as a collective. You know, for most people that were in this group, I was the first Aboriginal person that they had ever met. But there is a want across this nation for people to walk with the First Nation people. So as we gathered as a working group, we sat back and we created a workshop called the Uluru Statement from the Heart, Walking Together. And what did that mean as a nation? But as we went along our journey, so I'm going to sort of use my brother Dean's quote when we often show his TED talk, and behind, we do not stand here alone. But what stands behind me is hundreds of women and men who are actually not Aboriginal, that have come together in hope to find the heart of this nation. So as we journeyed over the last couple of years, we've taken, the wisdom and the knowledge that are from the words of our old people that are embedded in the statement. And as we spread those beautiful words across this nation, what we found, what I expected was for people to walk with First Nation people, but what I found was something so much more beautiful, that as we spread those words of unity, an invitation to walk with First Nation people, often I would find myself in these workshops and in these moments where people from multicultural Australia would weep. But these words that were meant for First Nation people were also healing and allowing multicultural Australia, people who were new Australians, some had been here for generations, some got off a plane yesterday. And through these words, they began to heal themselves. Often I'd leave these workshops and it was more about that than anything. And I walked away and I used to sit back and think how powerful this journey is, how powerful it is, that this is a message of unity, this is a message of hope, and I believe that the First Nation people, as we begin to heal, others will follow behind us. I have been truly blessed by this journey, by carrying those words of our people from those dialogues. But I just wanted to reflect on Dean with the conversation around COVID. I currently am part of an emergency response team across the regional areas of New South Wales for COVID. And in the last couple of weeks, I've walked these streets and I've heard the cries of our old people, the fear of our old people. I have wiped the tears from the eyes of our children. And often I sit at home at night on the end of my bed with my heart broken of the injustice, of still, even through a pandemic, how our people are left voiceless. I see unspeakable wrongs still committed, and I am baffled. But in that, my spirit begins to soar, because I believe that there is hope through the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that I believe through embedding this, supporting this, and I plead with every single one of you here today, will you walk with us, will you accept that invitation, and ensure that from here on in, never again will an Aboriginal child be left voiceless, or never again will an Aboriginal child be left behind, whether it's through removal or through a pandemic. We'll quote our brother, Stan Grant, we are a great nation, so therefore we should be held to great account. And I believe that COVID, if anything, has highlighted the need for the Uluru Statement from the Heart to be embedded. And I live in hope, because I really do believe that I will see the scales begin to tip for my people in my lifetime. And I just want to give a big shout out to the Sydney Alliance, to all those beautiful people who stand behind us, who have driven the Uluru Statement from the Heart right through Sydney and to other areas. It couldn't have been done without you. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Wow, you're such an inspirational person, Nicole. You really are. You've moved so many, and we thank also the Sydney Alliance for all of your solidarity. Everyone on here for all your solidarity. In the previous panel, we watched a part of a film about '88 and the convoy the convoys that went from places like Darwin, even Tasmania and Perth, to Sydney to to show that we were still here during the '88 bicentenary celebrations. And we've come a long way from them. And many of the people we mentioned and that are here today with us in this panel, we've got over 150 joining us today. And I see a lot of the faces, and I know that a lot of you were part of those protests marching with us in solidarity way back then. We are in a place now where, by the Reconciliation Australia's barometer, they're saying over 90% of Australian people want reconciliation. That tells us that people know the truth of this country's past, and that they want action. They're ready to see a referendum succeed. So I agree with all of the panelists. We are in a position now where we can win. We've just got to do the work to force these politicians to put the question to the people where we know the answer will be yes. I'm going to ask Diane now, our wonderful tech support, to play the Rachel Perkins film. This is a really powerful film. If you haven't seen it before, please make sure you watch it and absorb it. It puts a lot of context to why the Uluru Statement is the unfinished business. Okay. That's an incredibly powerful film that Rachel put together. I see Craig nodding there. It was one of the that film initially, that history of the struggle that you saw was one of the things. Well, Rachel had put together a film for the dialogues around the country to ensure that all of our people understood that history and those lessons from the past, which is one of the great things about the Uluru Statement. It takes many lessons from the past and it intelligently and strategically proposes the way forward in the most generous of ways. We are now going to hear some final words from our panellists, and then we're going to wrap up for the day. We'll start with you, Dean. Dean, as the as a leader in the campaign, you've done a lot of research. You've done a lot of work in understanding what motivates people, and I think we'll agree that the over 160 people we have on here now, just under 160 now. We're talking to those that are already walking with us, that are here in solidarity. And I think they'd love to hear some insights from you, some more of the statistics perhaps from your research, and what is the most motivating thing for people that support this, so that our supporters can use that to get more on board.
Yeah, no, thanks, Thomas. I think there's a couple of key things I'd like to impress upon everybody listening now. We are getting to the crunchy end of the campaign. We're getting to in the lead up to the election. We need to be very, very direct about what we're calling for here. And you're right, most of the people that are on this call are already what we'd call our base, our supporters. And we've done an incredible job over the last 18 months of reinforcing that base. We needed to get everybody on board, all of our natural supporters to grow that and reinforce that and make that strong. Our biggest challenge now is to really reach out to those undecided voters, the swing voters, if you like. They're a substantial group, and as I said earlier, once we have the conversation with them, they are more likely to support us. We're not really even focused on those opposing us at the moment. That'll come later. That small percentage, 16% Australian people that oppose a referendum on a voice, we will deal with them later. We're not focusing on those. We don't want to misdirect our energy and our focus. Our focus must be on trying to reach out, effectively what people would call Middle Australia, to try and bring them along on that. So I'd say to everybody on the call who is supporters, obviously continue to have the conversation with our natural supporters and our base, and at the same time try and reach out to those people who may not have heard about the Uluru Statement, and know that when you do, you're more likely to turn them into a supporter. The key messages that we know that resonate with those undecideds is the question of practicality, the question that this will have a real impact on the lives of our mob in communities. This isn't a flight of fancy and something that we want to do because we like playing around with the Constitution. We're only doing this because this will have a real impact in things like closing the gap. So mention that practicality bit and the idea of a fair go. You know, it's astounded me how many times in the campaign where we've worried about whether we should have all the answers to the details of the voice and, you know, what do we need to say to convince people? But actually, if you just say, look, this is just a fair thing to do, it's the Aussie fair go, you'd be amazed about how much impact that actually has as a very simple, direct message. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole. We can just appeal to that idea of a fair go for mob, and it goes a long way. So practicality, fair go, and start reaching out to those people that may not have heard it before. And I just can't overemphasize, it will have an enormous impact on our chances of success. So that's all I'd like to say. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks a lot, Dean. I saw a question come through there, and I might just take the opportunity to respond to this one from Helen Wilson. I understand some people think the order should be changed to treaty, voice, truth. The reason why the voice is the priority, and not exclusively the priority, this is an important thing to understand. Anybody that, it doesn't make sense to say that one thing must, the reason why the voice comes first is because you need the political power to use the truth to get outcomes, okay? A very simple concept to understand. You do not get change, you do not get decent outcomes in a treaty unless you build the national political power to be able to get the outcomes. We're in a federal system, and so we need to build a national representative body to have the Makarrata discussion with the federal government, the ultimate power in our political system. Lastly on that, to say that truth must come first really doesn't make a lot of sense. That is because, well, the 90%, the number of people that say they want reconciliation in this country indicates that a great majority of Australians already know the truth. The politicians certainly know the truth. They hear the Closing the Gap speech every year. A country is acknowledged in Parliament these days. They just choose to ignore it. And so, again, it's a matter of having the political power to use the truth to get outcomes. Okay, so I hope I've addressed that question pretty well. Craig,
can I just add something to that, Thomas, too? Just real quick. Yeah. I just want to have to say this. Also, the mob have already said what they want. And we've got to get past this thing of second guessing and trying to put other words into our mouths and tell us what's actually good for us. We've said voice treaty truth. That's the end of it. That's right. Self-determination means if you want to listen, then you've got to do what we're asking. So that's the explanations there. Craig, brother, I'd like you to say a few last words, mate, on your panel here. I saw you nodding your head at the film and everything, mate. Must have brought back a lot of memories.
Look, and wow, how powerful was that? But can I just quickly say to Nicole, sister, my goodness gracious, you really inspired me with your speech, and it wasn't to do anything else, but I guess given that we're talking about from the heart, that was from the heart, and my God, that was brilliant to hear, and no wonder people have made you the chair of that Sydney Alliance. So I'm in awe of what it is. Indeed, I'm in awe of Thomas and Dean and others around. Look, I guess I'll just go back to what I'm currently involved in. I'm in engaged to be involved with a pilot program, one of two that are in operation around the state, working with students that are disengaged at school, not inside the school gate, but outside. It's a bit like health is holistic. So kids having issues with attending the school is holistic. It's about getting out and working with the student and or the family and finding out what are the issues. So when I was thinking about that directly, the Uluru statement is how do we get these young ones to know about it? But not just our Aboriginal kids, certainly their mum and dads. How do we get the schools? How do we get it into the curriculum? How do we get this sort of stuff happening in the school so that the kids are the ones that are asking the questions? That will be to the parents. Years ago, we used to get a lot of kids, I'm talking about at Murrum Bridge, we used to get a lot of kids coming from Prairie Wood High School in Sydney. Very multicultural school. A lot of these kids never met Aboriginal people before, but they came out there, and these kids, they said, after they came out, and their favourite part about visiting Lake Jellicoe and interacting with the students at school was coming to Murrum Bridge, an Aboriginal community. And they loved it. They said, this is nothing like what we've been told. Our grandparents, our parents have told us a very different story about how you people live. This is nothing like what they told us. They said, so we're going to go back home and we're going to challenge our mums and our dads and our grandparents and say, what you told me is a lot of lie. I've been there. I met Aboriginal people. They're the friendliest people. They've invited us around. They enjoyed it, which is a very different story. So I guess, part of it is, and it's been happening, Dean, I'm fairly sure, and Thomas, that this stuff has been getting into the schools. How do we ensure that it keeps on going? How does someone like myself and all of the other people that are watching, how do they play a role in being able to get this out there so that they're talking? Like years ago, I was involved in producing Australia's first and only Aboriginal wine. We started that from our own idea. We made it operate. But I was also a part of the promotion or salesmanship. And I learned that you didn't have to have the most expensive promotion there, you know, by putting out all of these promos. Word of mouth was the best form of advertising, because for one person, you might get that being told to 100 of their friends, family. And then from each person that they've told it, they spread it far and wide. So I guess there are many ways, and people on the panel, if you, Thomas, you said there's 160 that are, is that how many you said was listening?
Yeah, close to that.
160 people. Wow, that's brilliant. So if we can get 160, can you imagine how easily and quickly that can multiply if you use that basic theory? That's how Yellowtail, the wine, actually did all of its sales. They never put out this big promotion. They just used word of mouth. Easiest, cheapest, but by far the most effective tool there. I just want to say thank you once more for inviting me. I felt rather like there were other people that should have been on the panel well before I was. And I'm always sort of like that. But to the people that I've met, Thomas, and I remember him telling us about himself up there at Uluru, and I thought, wow, this fellow's doing a wonderful job. Dean is a brilliant operator. Nicole is great, but wow, you know, there are so many of our mob out there that are doing fantastic jobs, that are making a hell of a difference. And even whether you're at the ISN or you're a mum at home or just someone who thinks that they know little, they can still do the promotion of this product if they believe in it. This stuff here, my community, Murrumbidgee, was opened in 1946. So my mother was born on the banks of the Darling River years ago. And those people that endured all of those tough times, when I first heard that statement up there, I thought, this is the stuff that they survived so that we can survive. And now we're surviving so our kids can survive. This is what they did that for, so that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that we will achieve all that we hope to, but it doesn't come easy. It won't come easy. We've got to scrap for it. We've got to argue for it. But just what we got here on the panel, no one's going to roll over and stop. We're going to keep going. And I'm sure there are others out there. And thank you to all of the non-Indigenous people that are supporting us, because we can go and tell a white fella one thing and they won't get the message, but one of their friends can tell them exactly the same thing, and they'll say, "Oh, wow, that's wonderful." I think, wait a minute, I just told you the same thing. So there is great benefits, and I can see my friends up there in the top part of the computer agreeing with that. We need you. You're very vital in this process and being able to get those people that we would ordinarily wouldn't be able to engage with. So yeah. So thank you once again. I hope everyone enjoyed what it is. I'm absolutely in awe of my panel colleagues, and that film. Wow, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you from my heart.
Thank you, Craig. Been a pleasure having you on here, mate. I'm sure everybody's gotten a lot from your contributions. Nicole, the very inspiring Nicole, can you leave us with some final words?
Oh yeah, I'm the same. I'd just like to thank my brothers here. It's always a privilege walking with every single one of you. And I echo that response back to you, Craig. You're an extraordinary man. I just really want to hope that as you leave today, that you'll just take a moment, please just take a moment in silence and read the statement. and allow the wisdoms of the words to sit with you, to sit within your heart and with your spirit. And as you read those words, I pray that you will just allow, that you'll accept the invitation from our people. And I just want to echo this. It doesn't matter whether your people have been here for 240 years. It doesn't matter if you arrived 20 years ago. It certainly doesn't matter if you arrived yesterday on Aboriginal lands. The invitation is to everybody. And our hope is that everybody will accept that invitation to walk with our people. I believe that this invitation will unite this nation, not only for First Nation Australians, but for all Australians. I pray that it'll be a healing vessel for all of us, that there will be a day not too far in the future that we will be all have an opportunity to have a voice and to live in a place where we all are given an opportunity to prosper. I just want to leave you with one story this day. I have delivered this workshop, our Uluru statement from the workshop, to hundreds of people. And if you want an opportunity to have that workshop delivered to you, to your community, to your organisation, if you want to know what it's about, please contact the Sydney Alliance. 2 years ago, I met a group of women, a huddle of women. Today, we are a force. We are a force for this nation. And can I just say, the burden is light when many hands hold the burden. And I just want to shout out to them. They all know who they are. They're deadly soldiers as far as I'm concerned. There were moments where I had to sit back and I exhaled and I thought, and there it is. They no longer check in with me anymore. They're out there doing their thing. They understood that they accepted the invitation and they're just got to be out there doing it. So well done, ladies. So with this note, not all that long ago, I sent the story to Thomas that I had the privilege of actually delivering the workshop in a school. And as I delivered it in a school, I heard a young Aboriginal girl, the whole of 16. She turned around and she said to her schoolmates, "Will you stand with us? Will you stand with me? Because I need things to change." This is echoed out of the mouth of our children. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, Nicole. Look, I was going to give Dean the last word, but I think we need to stop there. That's just absolutely beautiful, Nicole. A great story to finish on. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We're just going to do a little action, as I mentioned earlier, just to finish this off really quickly. And so what we're going to do is I want everybody to turn their cameras on and their microphones on.
Annette, you want to be in it?
When I count down, I want everybody to say "voice, treaty, truth." Okay, at that speed, voice, treaty, truth. Right, I'm going to count 3, 3, 2, 1 in a moment, and we'll all do that. Diane, our wonderful tech person, is recording this, so it's a collective action that we can do. All right. Leave on a high note. Voice, treaty, truth. So,
Voice, treaty, truth. Treaty, truth.